Hello, this is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. So, introductions. Feedback is greatly important. I can't stress it enough. It helps with the aspect of not only the podcast, but it helps to know what you all think. And I appreciate all you listeners out there. So, feel free to give me your thoughts, questions, concerns, and possibly show ideas if you have them. So, the way to reach me, either through email, Substack, follow me on Substack, make comments on Substack. Also X, and make comments on X would be greatly appreciated. And fill up those comments on YouTube as well. So here are some of the podcasts that I'm on. Spreaker, of course, Spotify, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, just to name a few. Alright, so this is going to be an installment, which means it's in 2 parts to wrap up in the month of November. So I'm going to talk about Sacagawea and her impact on history and my thoughts about that and all the facts that I have gathered through finding out about her and her story. So I'm going to talk about the historical background in this episode. And on Wednesday's episode, I'm going to not only talk more about it, but I'm going to talk about it from a media sense, particularly on the night at the museum when they covered and talked about Sacagawea and her character in that movie, and I'm going to give my thoughts about it. All right, here we go. Alright, so before I get into the aspects of the facts about Sacagawea, so now when I was going into the research saying, of course it's unfortunate putting a emotional being on, this poor woman, she was captured and everything, but without just stopping at that for the most part, without peeling the layers and to all of the story behind Sacagawea and her importance and her legacy onto society. So it's unfortunate that happened. But again, this subject matter of the situation, do you actually want to address and talk about the reality of how people lived at that time and how certain situations happen? I would equate it to the aspect of talking about not seeing things for what it is, or saying, as I said with Native people, Native Americans, that there was a caucus, a white race that entraced into the Americas, or what America was thought of, and silencing that notion and not wanting to have that prevalent into the aspect of American history. Why is that? Again, pushing a narrative of we're going to do a generalized notion of what a Native American is. We don't want to do all these nuanced things. We don't want to do all these extra things. I'm just putting it mildly. They don't want to take all the layers into finding and discovering and seeing the aspect of history of how people thought and how people were and how people commingle with one another, and the aspect of that interracial relationships, and then where it be with intermarrying and all of these are not a new subject. This is something that's been going on since since Adam and Eve, and since the dawning of man. I mean, you look, for instance, you look into the Bible, beyond Adam and Eve and Noah and all of this, what Adam and Eve, and then the sons, and then getting to the story of Noah, and then moving on to Moses. Moses, he intermarried. He had if I'm not mistaken, Ethiopian African woman. He married an African woman. That it's countless examples of this, and it's countless examples throughout history about this. And so when you want to escape everything and not see history for what it was and what it is, I think that makes the process of knowledge very stagnant, and it makes you look convoluted. And a really good example of this is, I always get that man's name, tongue-tied with that man's name, Neil deGrasse Tyson. All right. So this man is supposed to be prevalent in the science community. He's supposed to be a scientist. Now, at the very best and the very worst, but at the very best, scientists are supposed to be the examples of what it means to question, of the importance of questioning, how many discoveries you can get out of that, how many wonders you can get out of that, how many cures, it's important to always constantly question. Now, he's pushing this agenda that, it's perfectly acceptable to understand that gender is a spectrum, which is, what are you saying? So you mean to tell me you're a pseudoscientist because any basic biology book will tell you that female is female, male is male, and here are the organs to prove that. So, with me saying this and me presenting this, simply put as this: let's get beyond. It would be nice to adults to have an adult conversation and to see things for what it is, and get beyond things and to discovering the truth. And I think that's very important. So the aspect of Pocahontas and her story, with mainstream aspects of, now Disney, for what it is, it was an aspect of children's entertainment for centuries, but it showed its ugly head. Time other media comes to show their ugly head about this strange agenda of not taking matters of actually being honest about things. Now, there's one thing now which is really good, to take serious subject matter and making it suitable, digestible for the general public. But with that said, don't just go on this wide fantastical reality about what actually happened. Take the extra step. There is means to actually talk about something that's uncomfortable, but talk about it in a way that's not violating the audience that you're addressing, where it's not violating the innocence of people. It's not, where you get into the aspect of children and so on and all of this. Just presenting facts in a way that's entertaining, but it's actually accurate. And the subject matter that is not suitable, just redirecting it into layers of talking about things that are suitable, but just not fantastical aspects of it. The good case in point of that is about that I'm addressing is Disney's Pocahontas. So that was cute, sweet. They presenting the story like that, but it'll be another. Of course, it is. With the argument, oh, Mary, hey, that's a children's animation. That's for children. Yeah, but hey, there's ways to talk about history that's factually true and to enlighten children, to get children to understand things that doesn't talk down to them, or, and finding that balance is really good. I think a really good thing to pay attention to and to cater to when you go into the aspects of education and you go into aspects of the benefit of knowledge and the power of knowledge in our society. And so, another good case in point. So, I was talking about reading Rainbow in one of my episodes of last week, or the week before, it was last week. So, LeVar Burton, he's a really good example, okay? He's supposed to be this figure of literacy, and also the notion of the aspect of kindness and being an advocate for children. He's supposed to be, right? But at the same time, he wants to commit and act violence against mothers who want to protect the decency protect the decency and protect against inappropriate subject matter that adults will scream at, as far as. So, what are you actually saying about the aspects of, people like LeVar Burton? What are you actually saying about the aspects of the notion of knowledge and the notion of children's development? Do you actually care about it? Because you're really contradicting to yourself to where you're looking like, let me just say it for what it is. You're looking like you're a liar. You're like you don't actually care. So, with that being said, feel free to give me comments about the aspects of what your thought process about Native American people, Native American history and the culture in our American society, and then globally, all my listeners out there, what you think too. So feel free to either email me, follow me on Substack, X, and of course, fill up those comments in YouTube. We greatly appreciate it. Get those conversations going. I just like to know. And then this is another good way to be the vehicle behind, people addressing things honestly for what it is, for what they think about things. And I think that's important. If with all else fails with this podcast, that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I would like to do. Just be a platform for people to honestly talk about things, and then we, address things, and then just go from there. That's a good thing to do. And that's very helpful with the important aspect of empowering society. All right, I have some throat issue right now. Okay, with that being said, here we go with the facts. All right, of course, I will link this source in this episode and other sources in the other episode on Wednesday. All right, so here we go. It says, so this is from Britannica, and so it's saying this. And excuse the chickens in the background. We have chickens, so there you go. Bear with it. All right, so says, as a Shonan Indian woman who was an interpreter, traveled thousands of wilderness miles with the Lewis and Clark expedition from 1804 to 06, from the Mandan Hadatasha village in the North Dakotas to the Pacific Northwest. Separating fact from legend and Sacagawea's life is difficult. Historians disagree on the dates of her birth and death, and even on her name. And Hadatasha Sacagawea, pronounced with a hard G, translates to bird woman. Alternatively, Sacagawea means boat launcher and showing. Others favor Sacagawea. The Lewis and Clark journals generally support to the Hadatasha derision of this. So, a Limni Showan woman, she was about 12 years old when the Hadatasha raiding party captured her near the Missouri River's headwaters about the time of 1800. So it goes on to say that she was enslaved and taken to their Knife River Earth Lodge village near present-day Bismarck, North Dakota. She was purchased by French-Canadian fur trader Toussaint Charbonnier. And because one of his plural wives about 1804 became what, I'm sorry, I misread that. So she became, I don't know, harem, but multiple wives in his line of other wives. And this was around the time of 1804. They resided in one of the Hadatasha villages. So when explorers Meriwether Lewis and William Clark arrived in the Mandan Hadatasha village and built a fort in Haddon to spend the winter of 1804 to 05, they hired Chateaubriand as an interpreter to accompany them with the Pacific Ocean. This was all due to they couldn't understand Sacagawea's language. And because of the expedition party, and they needed to communicate with the Showans to acquire horses to cross the mountains. The explorers agreed that the pregnant Sacagawea should also accompany them. On February 11th of 1805, she gave birth to her son, John Baptiste. Departing on April 7th, the expedition ascended through the Missouri. On May 14th, Chateaubriand nearly capsized the white Prugon, or boat in which Sacagawea was riding. Remaining calm, she retrieved important papers and instruments, books, medicine, and other valuables that otherwise would have been lost. During the next week, Lewis and Clark named a tribute of the mountainous Mussel Shell River as she was called Sacagawea, or Bird Woman, after her. So this was in tribute, and it was after her. So if you can hear from the chickens, she proved to be a significant asset in numerous ways, searching for edible plants, as they say in this, making moccasins and clothing. So edible plants, which it goes without saying, that's very notable to pinpoint. So if you don't have somebody that's in the know of how to maneuver in nature, there are a lot of poisonous plants, and it could be easily killed. And it's good to have someone that has that insight with you. And so I'm going to expel even further about my thoughts about all this and the next aspect when wrapping up everything. So, making moccasins and clothing, as well as allaying suspicions of approaching Indian tribes throughout her presence. A woman and a child accompanying a party of men with peaceful intentions, indicated peaceful intentions instead of a threat. By mid-August, the expedition encountered a band of Showans led by Sacagawea's brother. Forgive me for the pronunciation. Kemahawait. The reunion of sister and brother had a positive effect on Lewis and Clark's negotiations for the horse and guide that enabled them to cross the Rocky Mountains. Upon arriving at the Pacific coast, she was able to voice her opinion about where the expedition should spend the winter and was granted her request to visit the ocean to see a beached whale. She and Clark were fond of each other and performed numerous acts of kindness for one another, but romance between them occurred only in the latter-day fiction. So, which it wasn't true. This is sensationalized to fit a narrative. So, Sacagawea was not the guide for the expedition, as some have numerously portrayed her. Nevertheless, she recognized landmarks in southwestern Montana and informed Clark that the Bozeman Pass was the best route between the Missouri and the Yellowstone rivers on their return of their journey. On July 25th of 1806, Clark named Pompey's Tower, now as Pompey's Pillar, on the Yellowstone after her son, whom Clark fondly called his little dancing boy, Pomp. The Chateaubriand family disengaged from the expedition party until their return to the Mandan Hashatasha village. Chateaubriand eventually received $409.16 and 320 acres for his services. Clark wanted to do more for their family, so he offered to assist them and eventually secured Chateaubriand as a position as an interpreter. The family traveled to St. Louis in 1809 to baptize their son and left him in the care of Clark, who had earlier offered to provide him with an education. Shortly after the birth of a daughter named Lisette, a woman identified only as Chateaubriand's wife, but believed to be Sacagawea, died at the end of 1812 at Fort Manuel near present-day Modebridge, South Dakota. Clark became the legal guardian of Lisette and John Baptiste and listed Sacagawea as deceased in a list he compiled in the 1820s. Some biographers and oral traditionals contend that it was another of Chateaubriand's wife who died in 1812, and Sacagawea went on to live among the Comanches. It started another family, rejoined the Showans, and died on Wyoming's Wine River Reservation on April 9th of 1884. These accounts can likely be attributed to the Showans women who shared a similar experience to Sacagawea's life. Sacagawea's son, John Baptiste, traveled through Europe before returning to enter the fur trade. He scouted for explorers and helped guide the Mormon Baltan to California before becoming an alcalde, a hotel clerk, and a gold miner. Lured to the Montana goldfields following the Civil War, He died en route near Banner, Oregon on May 16th of 1866. Little is known of Lissette's whereabouts prior to her death on June 6th of 1832. She was buried in the Old Catholic Cathedral Cemetery in St. Louis. Chateaubriand died on August 12th of 1843. Sacagawea has been memorialized, and statues and monuments and stamps and all of this are placed on her memory, her honor, and her name. In 2000, her likeness appeared on a gold-tinted dollar coin struck by the U.S. Mint. In 2001, U.S. President Bill Clinton granted her a decoration of honorary of a sergeant in the regular army. All right, so with this said, I am going to give my thoughts, and then I'm going to touch on briefly about the Lewis and Clark expedition. Okay, so my thoughts about Sacagawea, her background, her story. So, can't stress enough, looking at it from an objectivity is very important. So, putting everything together. So, it's quite interesting too. What I mean by this. So, it's quite interesting, for one, that it's not quite clear who she actually, her birth, where she came from, and then also when Chateaubriand, when he was coming into play, and his many wives, and claiming the woman that was claiming to be the Chateaubriand, with Chateaubriand, one of his wives, not clear if that was actually Sacagawea or not. That says a lot about that. What extra layer is there to the story of Sacagawea? Also about the aspects of Sacagawea, how things get over sensationalized to fit a narrative. So for one, Lewis and Clark. It's eerie how that plays out, with how that connects to the aspect of John Smith and Pocahontas, how their relationship wasn't. So, there's certain stories, certain legends, or certain narratives that say that Pocahontas and John Smith had an affair, not an affair, but they were in love with each other. The narrative being pushed more without, excuse me. The narrative being pushed more without admitting it, and it's funny with Disney's Pocahontas presenting that they were in love with each other and all of this romance, right? With that was far from the truth. In reality, Pocahontas was a businesswoman. She assimilated. She made her peace with that. It's more cut and dry, and of course it was sad. Some of the things that she experienced and emotionally what she went through, as far as the aspect of going on and starting a life for herself and a new culture, but also that's a good conversation to talk about the aspects of assimilation and the aspects of how people really feel about that versus shouting matches or saying something's racist when actually are saying you're a race traitor, you're not really authentically true to yourself. If you present yourself, for instance, if you black person who is highly intelligent and doesn't say, act, then their their tonal how they speak is correct, is sophisticated too, but they get labeled as they're trying to be white or something, when that's just who they are. That's part of their personality. Should they be ashamed of being intelligent? So it's on the opposite end. What is really going on with the psychological aspect of assimilating, into another culture? How does that transition work for everybody? Other people who don't like it. What does that actually mean? And so, that'd be a good case to look into too. And I'm thinking about myself about the aspect of that, with Pocahontas. But okay, going back to the main point here. So the reason why I brought that up is, why is it that it's, I understand it, it's part of human nature to say, oh, this is cute, and make something out of nothing when you really shouldn't. But on reality, just see things for what it is. Objectively, you get to the bottom line of everything. And so, just because Lewis Clark and Sacagawea were fond of one another and they were nice to one another doesn't mean they were romantically tied to one another. There is a case that is true, and unbeknownst to certain notions or certain agendas that mainstream culture and other things like that say, men and women can have platonic relationships. And so that proves the point even more with the story of Sacagawea, and it makes her story even more important to know that you can come together from different cultures, you can come together from different different genders in order to make things culture better, to harmonize, to make culture better, to make more impact in culture, to go on to the future of the development of, in this case, America, the state of America, the Dakotas, the St. Louis, all of these things. Is quite interesting. And so, with that being said, I'm going to get on to the aspects, touch on some of the aspects of the Lewis and Clark expedition, and then close out. Here we go. All right, so Lewis and Clark expedition lasted from 1804 to 1806. So, the U.S. military expedition was led by Captain Meriwether Lewis and Lieutenant William Clark to explore the Louisiana Purchase and the Pacific Northwest. The expedition was a major chapter in the history of American exploration. Here's why. On January 18th, 1803, U.S. President Thomas Jefferson sent a secret message to Congress asking for $2,500 to send an officer and a dozen soldiers to explore the Missouri River, make diplomatic contact with Indians, expand the American fur trade, and locate the Northwest Passage, the much sought-after hypothetical northwestern water route to the Pacific Ocean. The proposed trip took on added significance on May 2nd when the United States agreed to the Louisiana Purchase, Napoleon's sale of 128,000 square miles, or that is this exactly 2,100,000 kilometers of French territory for $27 million. Jefferson, who had already sponsored several attempts to explore the West, asked his personal secretary, Meriwether Lewis, to lead the expedition. Lewis was dispatched to Philadelphia for instructions in botany, celestial navigation, medicine, and zoology. He also purchased supplies and spent $20 on a Newfoundland dog, and name was Seaman. Jokes with that, but that was his name. So, Lewis, they got weapons at Harper's Ferry, Virginia, now in West Virginia. Supervised the construction of a 55-foot, 17-meter metric keelboat and secured small vessels, in addition to designating an iron-framed boat that could be assembled on the journey. As his co-commander, he selected William Clark, who had been his military superior during the government's battle with the Northwest Indian Federation in the early 1790s. The U.S. Secretary of War denied Lewis' request for a shared command, but Captain Lewis and Lieutenant Clark chose to address one another as captain to hide the fact from the other members of the expedition. For his part, Clark recruited men in Kentucky, oversaw their training that winter at Camp River Dubois, in Illinois, and served as the expedition's principal waterman and chartographer, that is. So expedition from May 14th, 1804 to October 16th, 1805. Over the duration of the trip, from May 14th to September 23rd of 06, 1804, and on May 14th, and then 1806 on September 23rd, from St. Louis to Missouri to the Pacific Ocean and back. The Corps of Discovery, as the expedition company was called, traveled nearly 8,000 miles. The entourage, numbering about 4 dozen men, covered 10 to 20 miles a day, poiling and pushing and pulling that 10-ton keel boat and two Borginese boats up the Mississippi River. Lewis' iron frame boat was later assembled and covered with skin near Great Falls in present-day Montana, but had to be abandoned because the seams leaked and there was no pitch to seal them. The captains and at least 5 others kept journals. President Jefferson had instructed Lewis to make observations of latitude and longitude and to make detailed notes about the soil, climate, animals, plants, and native people. Lewis identified 178 plants new to science, including bitterroot, Perry sagebush, Douglas fir, and ponderosa pine, as well as 122 animals such as the grizzly bear, prairie dog, and pronghorn antelope. It's quite interesting how, again, the impact of exploration, how that evolves to what we know as America, or what we know as to a society or a country from exploration. So the scientific names, Philadelphius Lewis, mock orange, Lewisa rediva, bitterroot, and Clarkia pulea, pink fairy, or rag robin, are but 3 examples of man's discovery. And it's quite interesting how they have their, where they reign as far as Philadelphia and then their names and all that. with the scientific discovery of these plants. Okay. But there are 3 examples of man's discovery. The expedition encountered immense animal herds and ate, well, from the herd, which it's quite understandable. So from these animal herds, they consume 1 buffalo, 2 elk, or 4 deer per day, supplementing by roots with berries and fish. They name geographic locations after expedition members, peers, loved ones, and even their dog. They experience dysentery, venereal diseases, boils, ticks, bites, and injuries from prickly pear. Yet only 1 man perished over the course of the journey. That's true tenacity there. Another primary objective involved diplomacy with Native Americans. The expedition held councils with Indians in which the corps had military parades, handed out peace medals, flags, gifts, delivery speeches, promised trade, and requested in tribal peace. And there also was something of a magic show, magnet compasses and Lewis's air gun, and an invitation for an Indian representation to travel to Washington, D.C. Most tribes welcomed trading opportunities and provided the expedition with food knowledge, guides, shelter, entertainment, and adult entertainment. You get that? Along with the entertainment. The Lakota encounter in South Dakota, however, already had British commercial ties and did not view American competition favorably, especially because it would make their enemies stronger. Their attempt to prevent the expedition from continuing upstream nearly turned violent, but Chief Black Buffalo's diplomacy diffused the situation. The expedition arrived at the Mandan and the Hitasha village near present-day Bismarck. And this is where we're getting to Sacagawea, North Dakota, and the construction of Fort Mandan, in which to spend the winter. The captains prepared maps, artifacts, mineral samples, plant specimen, and papers to send back in the spring. On April 7th of 1805, a small crew departed on St. Louis bound keel boat laddered with boxes of materials for Jefferson that included live magpies and a prairie dog. Meanwhile, the permanent party proceeded up the Missouri in 6 canoes with the 6 canoes and the 2 paragoons, I believe the pronunciation of that. It now consisted of 33 people, including soldiers, civilians, clerks, slaves, unfortunately, York, and 2 newly hired interpreters, a French-Canadian, Toussaint Chateaubriand, and his shorn wife, Sacagawea, who had given birth to a boy, Jean-Baptiste, that February. The departure scene was described by Lewis in his journal, and I'm going to end on this. So it says, this little fleet atoll, not quite so respectable as those of Columbus or Captain Cook, were still viewed by us with as much pleasure as those deservedly framed adventures ever beheld theirs. We were now about to penetrate a country at least 2,000 miles in width, on which the foot of civilized man had never trodden. The good or evil it had in store for us was for experiment yet to determine. And these little vessels contained every article by which we were to expect to subquest or defend ourselves. With that said, I'd like to know what you think about the aspect of Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea and American history. Your thoughts about American history in general. Either email me through Substack. Well, email first, Substack, X, and of course, fill those comments on YouTube. Be greatly appreciated. And now I am loading shorts, comedic shorts, that is. So go on and check it out. This reaches the end of the Harboring Light. Those comedic shorts are on YouTube, of course. So this reaches the end of the Harboring Light. Tune in, turn up, and absolutely take care. Bye-bye now.